point, though, for me, of the whole exercise was that at one point we did focus groups. In designing a research project, if you want to do a survey, very often what you'll do is you'll do focus groups first, where you get people from different walks of life together and you'll ask them questions, and maybe they're test questions you think you want to put in the survey, or maybe you just want to have discussions, okay, to sort of learn from those people about the kinds of issues that affect them. And in one set of the focus groups, what we did was we actually presented information about what we now call spin-offs, okay, but they were technologies that NASA either gave rise to directly or contributed to. And one of these groups is going to be with me until the day I die, because I learned tons of things from these 8 people, but this one person in particular. Group after group after group, we presented the same information. So we get to this group, and we present information about advanced breast cancer imagery and the technology that's used to basically get that imagery, which is now non-invasive and a whole lot of other neat things, but there's, I don't know if you follow this. You do if you're female, okay, but over the last 10 years or so, there's been a huge change, okay, in radiology with regard to how breast cancer imaging is done. And now, sort of after the sort of baseline mammography, now there is a whole other level of imaging that you can go to sort of help you resolve sorts of issues, whereas before you had to pick up a knife, okay, to do that. So, tell that story, and this woman bursts into tears. She's about 55 or 56. Every female in her family, going back 3 generations, has died of breast cancer. She's had it, her daughters have had it, her mother had it, her grandmother had it. They've got the gene, okay, whatever that gene is, all right, they have that gene. But one of her sisters, okay, who's actually older than she, had not yet died of it, and she'd had several rounds of it, actually. But the last round, which was one that was most insidious, had actually been caught because of advanced, which they don't even bother with these women in this family to do mammography, they just go right to the next step, okay, so had been caught, okay, in sort of its next go-round because of the advanced stuff. And now her whole family, I mean, her daughters and nieces and, you know, I mean, all the rest of that kind of stuff, they're all going in and getting that stuff now. And this is the first time that this multi-generational family of women have had any hope. And I'm going to cry talking about it. And she just completely broke down, and she said, where did this come from inside NASA? Thank God we had somebody there who actually knew something about it, as opposed to the rest of us who were just doing research. And so that person sort of talked about it, and she wanted to know how long did it take to develop. So then a few of us jumped in and said, well, it's in the context of the larger enterprise, right? So you can't say, I'm going to sit down and develop advanced imagery techniques, which at some point are going to be applied to cancer. They develop out of need, okay, or discovery, or both, okay, as you sort of move through the enterprise. But the point is, okay, and she got it. She said it before anybody else did. She said the point is, if you're not doing this for 20 or 30 years, maybe you never get there. Her whole group got there, to the point where actually we couldn't use their data, because the one person, okay, had pulled the whole group, okay, into her story. But what I learned, again, okay, was A, the power of narrative, okay, B, the power of relevance. And it was my research, okay, that showed that if you demonstrate relevance to people when you talk about NASA, you get a willingness to vote for increased funding. That's why that research caught hold. It's not because I said relevance is cool, it's because I made the connection between greater relevance. Oh, now people may be willing to say, yeah, you know what, NASA should get a few more bucks, okay, especially if you tell them how little they get.
Right.
So the story there, okay, was about that connection that she made. But for me, the neater thing about it, because we already knew that, if you make connections to people about specific things, okay, but for me what was most interesting about it was she took that and went immediately to this idea that you don't get that like that. You only get that, okay, if you have an enterprise that's building for the future, okay, and it has decades, okay, involved in sort of doing that development. And I have thought about that group and thought about that group and thought about that group for 3 years, sort of wondering what are the magic ingredients that get a person or people, okay, from the particular thing that they're connecting to, because we can all do that. We can all go talk about spin-offs and how they're directly related. But how do you get from there to the it takes you 20 years, it takes you 30 years, it takes you thinking about the future to be able to sort of develop that. So enterprises that are built for the future or building for the future are inherently valuable and challenging to a nation's best interest. I have some young mentees here at Johnson Space Center getting ready to go to Europe this year, and I said, thou shalt go to Rome, thou shalt stand on this hill, and thou shalt look in that direction. And they said, why? And I said, because as soon as you do that and you look across where the Senate stood and you lay eyes on the Colosseum, which you can see, okay, from there, you will understand that those emperors were building for the next 1,000 years consciously. Okay? Consciously.